or they stopped making NeXT computers, I think in '93, because they were too expensive. Not many people bought this computer. But they continued to work on NeXT. NeXT is the operating system of the NeXT computer. And NeXT was highly portable to different platforms. It was capable of running on PowerPC, on 60,000 types of processors, on Intel. Did I mention Intel? No. Okay. And then it was even ported to, the APIs were extracted, and it was called OpenStep. And it could run on top of Windows, for example. Here we see a screenshot of OpenStep on Windows. And there was a version for Solaris. So for Sun did work with NeXT together. That was all about '93. And in '96, Steve Jobs returned to Apple. But not only he did return to Apple, also NeXT was bought by Apple. And the successor of the Mac OS back then was the NeXT. So they transformed the NeXT operating system to the Mac OS X we know today. So we can say a Mac is a NeXT. It had much more genes from the NeXT than from the original Mac. It has maybe lots of graphical user interface elements still from the original Mac, but the whole architecture of the Mac is from the NeXT, or from the next step. And also the NeXT made possible, or the next step, that a transition to the Intel computers became possible. That today is no longer the 64-bit completely. So I find this, for me, is true. It's a NeXT computer. This makes it very fascinating. And also, the iPhone is a NeXT because a Mac and an iPhone are very similar, and Mac OS X runs on an iPhone too. And even an Apple TV has NeXT or Mac OS X on it, a special version, but it's the same thing. Okay, let's see where we can see evidence for this. So let's compare NeXT from yesterday. So when it ran on the NeXT computer with the Mac OS X system we know today. Can we still see the NeXT system? So first, let's look at the kernel, the Mac microkernel, as it was called. It was created in 1985 at the Carnegie Mellon University. It had everything it needed for a robust operating system, like virtual memory support, inter-process communication. It could support multiple processors. It had a Unix-style API. It had much from BSD inside. And today, it's still the kernel of the Mac. And it lives on as the Darwin open source project. And now for the evidence on the Mac, you just have to list the root directory of the boot drive. And the yellow line in the middle is the Mac kernel, as you can see on the right. So that Mac kernel, the original NeXT, that's still here on the Macintosh computer, and even on the iPhone. But more importantly, we have things in the user interface that came from the NeXT. So here, a screenshot showing the next desktop, how the users work with the next. In the corner down there on the right, you see the recycle bin, so, or the recycle symbol. In the beginning it was a black hole, so like a black hole in the sky. You could put things in it and then it would eat up. And then it became this recycling stuff, and today it's back to the trash can we know from the original Mac. Okay, and here we have Snow Leopard, today's Mac OS system. It looks very different, but it isn't, because we have the dock down here. The dock is used to start applications, to see which windows are minimized, to find the trash can, everything. It's the way on the Mac to work with tasks. And this already existed on the next computer. And it was also called the dock. And on the Mac today, you can also position it on the right, left, or top. I'm not sure, but left and right. Another feature is the services menu. This is a very nice feature that came from the Next. It's a little bit like using the clipboard or the pasteboard, but you can instruct other programs to perform a task for you. An example is you select some text in a word processor, and then you call the service like translate this text to another language. And as a result, you get the translated text back into your word processor. It replaces the selection. Or you could select some text and send it by email. Or you could send attachments, file attachments, or you can perform a calculation, anything. And every application can provide services to other applications, and all these services are present in the services menu. Every very good one. And here you see the Snow Leopard version. It has, in Snow Leopard, they took this feature that was in the system since '88, and for, I think, one of the first time they really improved it. But it's still the same idea. And here you see the services menu back on the Next. And the main difference between today and on the Next is today you see only services that make sense for the context. And back then you saw all services and they were enabled, disabled. And today you can assign keyboard shortcuts, whereas in the old days it was just a mouse thing. Another famous Next feature is the way you browse files on the system. It's still, this is the Mac version of it. On the left side you choose the root folder or a shortcut. Then it opens up in this column. And then you click on a folder, then it opens up in the next column, and so on until you are on a leaf, on a file, and then you see a preview of the file. And this again was invented on the Next computer. Here you see how it worked on the Next. So this came to the Mac. And on the Next there was a powerful addition to the system, this display postscript. It was the way how the system presented text on the screen, how it did 2D graphics. The idea was that it should work exactly the same on screen as on the printer, so you get the same results. And this is kind of still in the system. It's not PostScript anymore, because this was too expensive to license from Adobe. So they switched that to Quartz and to PDF. And that's why on the Mac, every application can create PDF files with the You don't have to install additional software to do that. Okay. Now let's look at the software development environment. I heard from Urs that many of you also do software development, so this may be interesting for you. Again, we compare yesterday's Next environment with today's Mac software tools and language. So before we start, there are some very well-known software that were originally created on the Next. One example is Mathematica. You should know this software. It was first on the Next and then ported to other systems. Another example is Lotus Improve. I believe it's where also the time tables and pivot tables were invented or first implemented. And later also it was ported to other systems. Also there was a gaming engine created on the Next, and then again ported to other systems. And the most important example is the web. Tim Berners-Lee worked back then at CERN, also in Switzerland.
Berners-Lee. B-E-R-N.
Berners-Lee.
Missing an arm.
Oh, Berners. Okay. He worked then at CERN, and he wrote a paper about how the web should work, or a paper about the web, and the first implementation of a web server run on this Next computer. And I believe also a web browser, primitive one, was created on this Next. And the funny sticker here, this machine is a, I think, server. Do not power down.
So, all implemented in there.
So, and this is, and now maybe the question: why did these people choose the Next to create new software, maybe software that was really ahead of its time, like the web? Let's listen to Tim Berners-Lee.
The web would not have taken off, it would have splintered into many, many proprietary incompatible webs.
This thing was just, I think, 10 years ahead of anything else that was on the market at that time. And that was one of the reasons why it was so difficult to get the web in, to demonstrate it even to somebody else, because you had to take the whole machine with you.
But rather, this Next, I should say all this pretty much, this was really, really easy, all the work had been done for it. So there's a program that you can run which isn't pair, is that? No, there's a thing called the interface builder, which you can
The interface builder.
It's in the development kit. And so you can just say, I want a new project, I'm going to call it World Wide Web, capital, 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 and then you can drag in the menus. So that link menu, I just dragged things in, new menu item, new item, new item.
Create a new application. Look at that. So I'm creating a new application.
There you go.
I'm gonna take a text field here. This one, that's the big text. Okay, I'm gonna take a text field
And already inside that
and
text
make